Well, the DPP certainly looks a lot more organized than the opposition parties. But I think with the opposition parties, the point, I mean, you've talked about the polls and the survey and the margin of error. I mean, the point isn't just the presidential election. It's about how the presidential election, the presidential candidate and the vice presidential candidate can bring up the votes down ticket. So in the legislative yuan, Taiwan has a proportional representation system in addition to a district system. So to boost their votes in order to get more seats in the legislature where they can direct the legislative agenda, that's quite key in the considerations of both the KMT and the TPP. And that's one of the reasons why they can't get along for right now, because they need to sort that out.
Well, there's not very much time left. So what are you expecting to see as the result? How many presidential candidates will there be? Because, of course, Terry Gou is also waiting in the wings, and we've been hearing that he's been having meetings with the TPP.
So I think very likely we're going to see 4 sets of presidential candidates. That's the DPP ticket, the KMT ticket, the TPP ticket, and of course, Terry Gou's independent ticket. Now, of course, things are fluid, things can still change, but at this late stage, I think it's going to be really tough to figure out how you're going to divvy up the advantages, the costs, and so I suppose the hope is that if Terry Gou, who's trailing in the polls, is able to drop out, that might shake things up a little bit, but it doesn't seem that Terry Gou is willing to do that at this point.
Mandy, jumping in here, Ian, is there a likelihood that Beijing would want to get involved in some way in these elections?
So Beijing has historically put a lot of pressure on Taiwan voters every time they go to the polls, especially for national level polls at the presidential and legislative level. And this time around, I suppose if you look at the military activity in the air and at sea near Taiwan, that's continuing. There are rumors of alleged PRC efforts to buy and influence voters, including allegedly trying to get the opposition ticket to sort of congeal in order to challenge the DPP, which Beijing doesn't like. However, Xi Jinping has made a promise at APEC to President Biden that he's not going to interfere in the Taiwan elections. We'll see if that comes to pass. Xi Jinping has previously made promises, such as about not militarizing the South China Sea features that China reclaimed, but they went ahead and did so anyway. So that remains to be seen. Besides, if there's any effort to interfere, it's likely to be clandestine, because any sort of open publicity on this is unlikely to play well for Beijing.
Well, it certainly leads to the next question then. For any incoming government in Taiwan, they have to manage that balancing act of not annoying Beijing and also engaging internationally, because it's so dependent on exports and it needs to protect those economic interests offshore as well. How do you think this is going to be managed?
Right, so that's a tough question for anyone who comes to office. Taiwan has to maintain a autonomous, independent international profile in order to sort of push forward on its economic interests. Of course, it wants to do so in a way that doesn't provoke Beijing unnecessarily. What we see in the Taiwan polls very consistently is that about 80+% of people in this very competitive democracy want the status quo. So essentially, any politician that veers from the status quo is likely to get punished by Taiwan voters. So that's really on the Taiwan side. Now, what the sort of formulas have been is essentially on the DPP side to say, okay, well, we want to deter any changes to the status quo by Beijing, so we're going to build up defense, and any cooperation will come on top of deterrence. Now, the opposition, the KMT ticket, is saying, well, we want engagement and integration. Perhaps that's a way to mollify Beijing. That's a different approach. TPP has been flipping around. Terry Gou's position has been much closer to the KMT one, which he's traditionally been affiliated with.
Ian, the fact that Lai Ching-te picked Xiaobi Kim as his running mate, she was the representative over in the United States for the last couple of years. If they were to succeed in this presidential race, would this indicate a stronger mandate or a mandate for stronger, warmer relations with the United States?
I think what a Lai Xiao victory would mean is a mandate for the status quo in terms of managing the current set of ties with both Washington and Beijing, meaning to say that to keep a steady hand, to not give in ground, to not accommodate unnecessarily. I think that's what ultimately it means. Xiao on the ticket means somebody who knows Washington very well, who can really manage the U.S. side of that equation. Now, on the PRC side, of course, they don't like any of the DPP candidates. So the point there would be to, I suppose, maintain the view in Beijing that the DPP is not going to rock the boat. Despite Beijing's protestations, I think that's something that they may be willing to live with, even if they're not happy with it.